VE Pump Calibration. When you finish this program, you'll be able to calibrate the VE pump by following service training brought to you by Bosch. Considering variations of the VE pump, you'll find you do better when you follow step-by-step written instructions. You will want special tools and test equipment to perform these calibration steps. To begin, mount the pump on the test bench using the proper adapters. Then, from the test bench, connect the fuel supply to the pump inlet. Use a special hollow bolt to connect the low pressure gauge reading test bench feed pressure. With the overflow fitting removed, use this special adapter to connect the high pressure gauge for monitoring the supply pump. You'll remember it pressurizes the pump interior. Now to this adapter, connect the overflow fitting and a fuel overflow return line. This is the timing piston travel gauge. Install it here after removing the cold start advance or cover plate. Once it's installed, you'll want to zero the gauge. You'll need 12 volts DC when your VE pump has an electrical shutoff. After you've made the electrical connection, be sure the solenoid operates to admit fuel. When you turn the power on and off, it'll sound like this. If your spec sheet shows a plunger BDC position, you can skip this next step. Some VE pumps have a specified lift to port closure. For these, you'll need to check the pre-stroke dimension. On the test bench, how can you check out this dimension hydraulically? Start by removing the center access plug. In its place, mount the pre-stroke measuring device with extension and dial indicator. Then, with the pump plunger at BDC, clamp the dial indicator so it's preloaded and the gauge is zeroed. Lay a drip pan below the overflow pipe and tighten the drip spout in position. Adjust the test bench feed pressure to specs. You should see test oil flowing from the overflow pipe like this. Now, manually rotate the pump in the proper direction until you see the fuel flow slow down. Stop rotation when you see the flow of fuel cut back like this. This represents lift to port closure of the plunger at the fill port. Now read the dial indicator. Compare your plunger lift with the specified value for lift to port closure. If necessary to correct this, insert the correct pre-stroke shim under the base of the plunger. To do this, you'll remember you have to partially disassemble the pump. With the pre-stroke correct, remove the measuring device and reinstall the access plug. That concludes your pre-stroke check required on some VE pumps. The following applies to all pumps. When you prepare to calibrate, connect the high pressure lines from the pump to the test nozzle holders. Back off both stop screws for the control lever. Be sure the test oil is heated to the proper temperature. Check the pump nameplate for direction of rotation and be sure you operate the bench accordingly. With a tension spring, hold the control lever against the high-speed stop screw. Check the test bench feed pressure. Bleed air from the high-pressure lines while running the injection pump at low speed. Warm up the pump for 10 minutes at about 1,000 RPM. During this warm-up, the pump must be delivering fuel. This is a good time to bleed any air trapped in the timing piston travel gauge. You will follow a logical calibration sequence. when you follow your test specifications. First, supply pump pressures and related timing piston travel. Then, fuel quantities delivered at full load, at low speed, at high speed, and at start. Your first calibration is timing piston travel. To do this, you'll set quantity for an initial full load adjustment. Later, you will set full load precisely to specs. Remember how greater supply pump pressure against the piston advances the timing? As you run the pump, note the supply pump pressures at specified RPMs, and in each case, the related timing piston travel. If necessary, adjust the pressure regulator to achieve the supply pump pressures and specified timing advances. Adjust the timing shims if you fail to achieve correct piston travel within the pump pressure tolerance. Setting full load adjustment precisely to spec is the next step in your calibration sequence. Adjust this full load screw until the correct quantities are delivered at each of the RPMs shown in the spec sheet. Adjusting low idle quantity is the next step. With the control lever against the low idle stop screw, set the screw for the correct low idle draw at the specified speeds. Raise the RPM and check regulation. Fuel quantity should drop, of course, according to specifications. Next, check dimension A of the idle adjustment screw. If the distance measured is above or below the permissible dimension A, the control lever is probably offset and must be repositioned or replaced with an alternate lever. To check high-speed regulation, you will run the pump at rated speed, at high idle, and at an RPM between those two. Using the spring to hold the lever against the high-speed stop, adjust the high-speed screw for quantities shown in the spec sheet. With the overflow draining into a graduate, measure overflow quantity over a 10-second period at the speed indicated. Finally, with the control lever released from the high-speed stop, measure dimension B. This is the gap between the high-speed stop screw and the control lever. Checking start quantity is the final step in your calibration. Connect the high-pressure line leading from pump outlet A to a test nozzle holder set to a pressure of 196 bar. As you run the pump at the speed given under start, measure the start fuel quantity. If the starting fuel delivery is not attained, it's possible that the starting fuel dimension has not been measured correctly. Refer to your repair instructions for checking procedures. Do the stop solenoid test at the RPM shown in the spec sheet. Test the VE pump with mechanical shutoff by checking for zero delivery with the lever in the stop position. All right, you're about finished. Remove the timing piston gauge and install the cold start advance, or on some VE pumps, a cover. The stop for the cold start lever must be adjusted with a feeler gauge, like this. Disconnect the high and low pressure lines and remove the injection pump from the test bench. Seal the stops as required. In this program, you've seen calibration highlights. The pre-stroke check required on some VE pumps, the supply pump pressure and related timing piston travel, and deliveries at full load, low speed, high speed, and start. In these 4 programs, you have seen operation, disassembly, reassembly, and calibration. Now you're ready to service the VE pump. Brought to you by BOSCH.